Hello all my dear students. Today we are going to discuss about anti-diarrheal drugs. Before going to drugs and treatment, we have to know what is diarrhea. According to a layman, he will be describing, if he has got an loose stool, he will be describing it as a diarrhea, or he may not be not aware about the amount which he lost, or the episodes, or the color or order of the stool which he is passed. Just a single episodes of loose stool itself, he will be describing it as a diarrhea. So what is really a diarrhea? For that, WHO defines diarrhea as it's 3 or more loose stools or watery stools in a 24-hour period. So it should be 3 or more loose or watery stools in a 24-hour period. Pathologically, it is the passage of excess water in the feces. That means excess fluid in the feces than the normal consistency. So when the excess water is losing through the feces, it is pathologically it is the diarrhea. So diarrhea means there should be excess water. So we have to know where this water is coming from. So for that there are mainly 4 reasons for developing, or biochemical level we can describe as there are 3 reasons for developing excess water in the feces. First of all, it's due to decreased electrolyte and water absorption. So we know that our intestine or the gut tract is the place where all the substances which we have injected or we have taken orally will be absorbed from our intestine. So when there is a decreased absorption of these electrolyte and water from the food which we have taken in, it will leads to loose stool or excess water in the feces. Next is increased secretion of the intestinal mucosa. So when the content is passing through the intestine, and when the intestinal mucosa secretes some secretions or excess secretions into that gut, then there will be excess fluid in the feces. Next important reason is increased luminal osmotic load. The osmosis, we have know that osmosis, when there is a higher concentration, so from lower concentration, or our body will try to make it an isosmotic level. So when there is a higher osmotic level content in the gut or in the intestine, the body or the mucosa will try to make it isosmotic by giving some water from outside or from the cells to that lumen. And finally, inflammation of mucosa and exudation into the lumen. We will be knowing that when even a simple infection or any inflammation itself, we know that there will be some edema or some excess fluid collection in that area. Same way, when there is any inflammation in the mucosa, it will leads to exudations, or the fluid from our blood or somewhere will come there and it will exude through that cells. So any inflammation also will leads to or will cause some excess fluid in the feces. Okay. Before going to the treatment part, we have to know some relevant physiology which occurs in our intestine. As we know, the intestine is the main organ in our body which helps in water and electrolyte absorption. Along with that, it can also have a property of secretion. So water and electrolyte will be absorbed or secreted in the intestine. Out of intestine, jejunum is the most freely permeable area for salt and water. So jejunum is the intestinal part where there is a free movement of water and salt. So it is the free movement of salt and water. And one more thing you have to keep in mind, that when there is a movement of salt occurs, mainly the sodium salt. When the sodium is moving, along with the sodium, the water is also moves. So along with the sodium, the water also moves. So when the sodium is moving from inside to the outside, so the lumen to the cell, then the water is also move along with the sodium. So when the normally the salt in the lumen will be absorbed by the intestinal cells. Along with that, water in the luminal content is also absorbed. Okay, this is the normal mechanism which occurs in our body. So for the treatment of diarrhea or treatment of excess water in our luminal content also, this concept is used. We are using the salt or water concept. Okay. Then we coming to our topic, that is the intestine. The jejunum is the most freely movable, or most freely permeable part of our intestine. Again, when we coming to the later part, it is the ileum and colon. There are some separate mechanisms or separate physiological activity for absorbing water and salts. So the ileum and colon, there is a mechanism called active sodium potassium ATPase mediated salt absorption. So this is a pump which different types of pumps can be seen in our body. Out of that, sodium potassium ATPase mediated salt absorption pump is there in our intestinal lumen. So it is an active process. For absorbing one salt, sodium, we have to give one potassium, and this process needs some energy, that is for by ATPase. So it is an active process by absorbing sodium and water. So when the sodium is absorbed, to make an isosmotic situation, water is also absorbed. So this is an active process. In the jejunum, it is a free permeable area, so there we don't need any energy for absorbing the salt and water. But here it is only energy needed process by absorbing sodium by sodium ATPase, sodium potassium ATPase pump. And in ileum, there is another mechanism called glucose facilitated sodium absorption. Glucose facilitated sodium absorption with the sodium glucose co-transporter. So here it is a co-transporter. When the sodium is moving in, the glucose also moves along with the sodium. This occurs in the ileum. So when the sodium is moving inside from the lumen to the cells, the water also moves from lumen to the cells, and also the glucose also moves from the our lumen to the cell. So this both sodium and the glucose will have got an additive purpose for absorbing water. Next important thing in the physiology is that the osmotic load of luminal content plays an important role in determining the final stool water volume. That the reason I have already told. The osmotic content, when the contents which we are taking orally, which has got higher osmotic level, then the body will have a normal mechanism to make it an isosmotic situation. So the fluid from inside our cells will be excreted to the lumen to make it a isosmotic situation. So when there is an osmotic imbalance, our body will try to make an isosmotic situation. So the luminal content is an important factor which will determine the final stool volume, so stool water volume. And also some stimulus which leads to enhancement the action of CAMP and CGMP also will leads to net loss of water and salt. So when this is also activated by some other causes, it also will leads to salt and water loss. And finally, another important reason for increasing the fluid level is by some toxins, some bacterial toxins, mainly the toxins produced by cholera, exotoxins which are produced by the E. coli, mainly the E-tech type of E. coli, then the Staph aureus, Salmonella. They all will activate the adenyl cyclase, which enhances the secretion. The adenyl cyclase mechanism, which is seen in our mucosa and all, it will be activated by these type of toxins, bacterial toxins, and it will enhances the secretion. But when we consider a total percentage of population or total case of diarrheal diseases, these are only a few percentage, only a 1 to 2% of cases we can see this bacteria infection which leads to diarrhea. So when it is a bacterial infection, the main mechanism of increasing water is by activating the adenyl cyclase, which enhances the secretion of the intestinal cell wall or intestinal cells. Okay, so these all are the physiological activities which leads to excrete or which leads to excess water in our stool. Now we will move to the therapeutic level or therapeutic measures to for treating the diarrhea. So first and foremost, the important thing measure is to rehydration, or rehydration is the first and foremost treatment measure. And about, as I've told earlier, 90 to 95% the diarrheas will be non-pathogenic. So the main treatment modality for treating such condition is the rehydration. So we are replenishing the normal fluid level in our body. That is known as rehydration. Second part is by antimicrobial drugs. When I have described the normal physiology, I have told the last factor is by some microorganisms. So if we confirmed the diarrhea is due to any microorganisms by examining the stool or something else, we can treat with the antimicrobial drugs, specific antimicrobial drugs. And as a recommendation, it is told that only when we confirmed it is due to a bacteria, we can give antimicrobial drugs. But in a normal or in our physicians and doctors, they routinely prescribe 1 or 2 antimicrobial along with the diarrheal treatment, along with the rehydration. And the third one is but to replenish our normal gut flora, that is by probiotics. And you will be knowing that in our gut we have got some normal pathogens, non-invasive, non-pathogenic bacteria in our gut. It will helps to maintain our normal flora in our gut, which helps for digestion and all. So when we have some diarrheal disease, or when we are taking some antibiotics, that means some broad spectrum antibiotics and all, this normal physiology or normal gut flora will be distorted. So we have to maintain, or we have to restore that normal physiology. So routinely now the doctors and the physicians are prescribing probiotics along with these antidiarrheal measures. And there are some non-specific antidiarrheal drugs, and these are less commonly used, but there are some non-specific antidiarrheal drugs that we will discuss later. And a few percentage of diarrhea will be due to inflammatory bowel diseases. These diseases are commonly they are some type of autoimmune disorders like Crohn's disease or some ulcerative colitis and all. So the pathology cannot be cured by giving some antidiarrheal measures. So we have to treat that disease, or we have to treat that autoimmune disease, then only we can stop the diarrhea. So the drugs for the inflammatory bowel disease. So we will be discussing all these things. First, the rehydration. As I've told, due to the diarrhea, our body, majority of the fluid in our body will be lost. So we have to replenish that lost water in our body. And majority of cases, about 90 to 95% of diarrhea will be cured by giving this rehydration. And this is the only treatment needed for treating our diarrheal diseases. And how we can give rehydration, or how we rehydrate? We can give by 2 methods. One is mainly the oral method, and the other one is the IV or intravenous method. Here the oral method is the most common method, and the IV method or intravenous method will be needed only in severe situations. So where do we need intravenous rehydration? Needed when the fluid loss is severe, that is more than 10% in the body weight. As we know, the body weight or our body weight is constituted mainly by the water in our body. So when we consider, or when there is a loss of water more than 10% of our body weight, then we have to substitute by giving intravenous rehydration. And also when the patient is having severe diarrhea, or there is a number of episodes occurring and he is losing more than 10 ml per kg per hour, then also we will have to give IV rehydration. And the third condition is if the patient is having only a mild diarrhea, but he is or he or she is unable to take oral fluids due to some weakness, stupor or vomiting and all, then also we will have to substitute by giving intravenous administration. Now the important part, the oral rehydration therapy or ORT. Okay, that is the most important treatment method for diarrhea, or most commonly used treatment method for diarrhea. So when we use this ORT, we can use in a mild or moderate cases from the beginning itself. So that when the patient is having diarrheal disease or it is a mild or moderate case, we can start from the beginning itself. And as a measures, as a treatment measure, we can use the glucose added salt. As I have described in the initial part, that the absorption of the salt is through our sodium potassium ATPase pump in colon and ileum, and ileum also has got another mechanism, sodium glucose co-transporter. So when we add glucose along with salt, mainly the sodium salt, both will be absorbed and the water also will be absorbed. This is the basic concept for treating diarrhea, or stopping the loose stool, or stopping the secretions into the lumen. So by giving glucose added to salt. Okay, so in within 200 years of time, we have got 7 pandemics of cholera as our COVID-19 now, which is going on. Like that, within a 200 years of period, we have experienced 7 pandemics of cholera, which was started in 18th and 1824 or somewhere. Mainly, the first episode or first pandemic was mainly in our India, which along the Ganga River and all, and the as at that time and all, the mortality was very high. And later in 1900s, when many researchers were going along in India and also in European countries and South African countries and all, there were many episodes of pandemics of these cholera. So at that time, in 1970s and all, in our there were studies going in Calcutta and Bangladesh and all, and during the Bangladesh Liberation War, which was started in 1970s, early 1970s, again there was major cases of cholera, and at that time some scientist has found out a solution for treating this diarrhea, and they found that the glucose which is added with the salt, which helps to replenish our body by absorbing more water from the contents. That means but the initial in 1900s and all, they were using high salt and combinations and all, but even though it reduced the risk of dehydration, but the high amount of salt, sodium, which was in that, will leads to hypernatremia and associated problems in our body. So in 2002, WHO has recommended a new formula ORS. ORS means oral rehydration solution or oral rehydration salt. So the WHO has introduced or recommended a new formula in 2002, which has got a less amount of sodium and also less amount of glucose when compared to the initial part, which was introduced in 1970s. 1970s, when the Bangladesh war was going on, they have found out one formula for this feeding, and it contained high amount of sodium and also high amount of glucose. At that time, it was known as Dhaka saline and all, Dhaka saline, Dhaka salt and all. Then later, 2002, WHO recommended that the new formula by reducing the sodium and also by reducing the glucose, and now it is the universally used in children as well as adult for treating diarrhea. So new formula WHO ORS 2002, a new formula with low sodium, low glucose, ORS released by WHO. The important thing was it helps to reduce the stool volume by a 22%. So it helps to reduce the stool volume by 20%, and also it helped to reduce the vomiting by 30%. And also it permitted faster water absorption and reduces the risk of hypernatremia. As I've told, the earlier solutions were having high amount of sodium. When the sodium amount was high, it leads to hypernatremia related problems. So the new ORS, new formula ORS helps to reduce the risk of hypernatremia. And the last 3 factors, it is cheaper, effective and safe. That made it a wonder drug and most popular drug. So the third world countries like India, Africa and all, we were very cheaply using this ORS solution for treating for treating the diarrhea. It is the cheapest, effective and safest drug for treating diarrhea. When you are going to for your community medicine postings in periphery and all, you can see that in these health centers and all, or the primary health centers and all, they will be making solutions of ORS daily. They will be making the ORS solutions daily for giving for diarrhea. You can see in any PHCs or any hospitals when you go, any government hospitals when you or visit, just check the OP or the emergency department. There will be a freshly prepared ORS will be there. Okay, it is the cheapest and effective and safest drug for treating diarrhea. So we will see what are the contents of ORS. So we have to see the contents and its concentration. It is very important. The contents and the concentration is very important. Sodium chloride 2.6 gram, potassium chloride 1.5 gram, trisodium citrate 2.9 grams, and glucose 13.5 gram. And these 4 salt will be dissolved in 1 liter of water. This is the contents of ORS. So when we talking about these ORS in concentration terms, the sodium will be in 75 millimoles, potassium 20 millimoles, chloride will be 65 millimoles, citrate 10 millimole, and glucose 75 millimole. The total osmolarity will be 245 milliosmol per liter. So when we mix these four items, NaCl, KCl, trisodium citrate, glucose in the above level in 1 liter of water, the total osmolarity of that solution will be 245 milliosmol per liter. This is the newer formula ORS. Initial formula ORS was 310 milliosmol per liter. Now it is reduced to 245 milliosmol per liter. Okay. And this thing is very important. This content, the grams, the weight, and the concentration is very important. You have to study thoroughly this concentration. Now, how we will administer the ORS or ORT? Administration of ORS depend upon the degree of dehydration and the capacity of patient to drink. Okay, so when the patient is having a mild dehydration only, so then we will have to give only a few amount of ORS, and also the patient is not capable of drinking. There is no is not able to drink. For the children and all, they will be not able to drink. So we will have to modify our treatment method. The patient are encouraged by drinking small quantities every hour till the fluid loss has to be made. So we have to give the solution in a small amount or small quantity regularly for every hour till the dehydration is reduced. So a full amount is not given at a time. We are giving only a few amount or few quantity of this solution regularly for many hours. In each hour we will give a small amount, and this is continued for many hours. Then we will maintain the or replenish the normal fluid level. Okay, oral rehydration therapy is not designed to stop diarrhea but to restore and maintain hydration. So this is not a treatment method to stop diarrhea but to restore and maintain hydration, electrolyte, pH balance. Okay, not only hydration, it also helps to maintain the electrolyte and pH balance. So this is a vicious circle. When the hydration, the electrolyte balance and pH balance is maintained, it normally will reduces the diarrhea. Okay, when diarrhea is reduced, this also will be reduced. Okay, so this is the main mechanism or main biochemical activity occurs in our body when we are treating dehydration with this oral rehydration solution. And also we have to prepare the solution every day freshly. So when we mix a packet of ORS solution in 1 liter of water, we can't keep it in fridge or refrigerator or somewhere, or we cannot keep it safe for using next day. We have to finish that solution within one day, or if there is any leftover, we can't store that. We have to prepare a new solution the next day. So the shelf life for one solution is only 24 hours. So within 24 hours we have to finish it off, or the rest of should not be used again. So every 24 hours we have to prepare a new solution. Okay, this you have to keep in mind when someone advises, or when someone asks you what to do with the excess amount of ORS which you have already prepared. So you can tell them we can't use for the next day. So next day you have to prepare a new ORS solution, or we will discard the excess amount there itself. Okay, and when we administer, as I've told earlier, it depends upon the degree and the ability of the patient to take. In children and all, it will be difficult for them when we give this solution alone. So we will have to make some flavors. We will have to mix with some orange juice or some other fluid, or even with our rice water, kanji. We can use, instead of water, we can pour this ORS solution and mix it and give to them. Okay, so these all are the some methods which we administer our ORS. And an important thing, another important thing is that not only for this rehydration or for diarrhea, we can use ORS for some other conditions also. That is known as non-diarrheal uses for ORT, mainly in post-surgical, post-burn, post-trauma. These all are conditions there will be a severe loss of fluid from our body. So we have to maintain our rehydration, and also will helps to nutrition, maintain the nutrition. So in place of IV infusions, we can use this oral rehydration solutions. We can supplement our nutrition, and also we can maintain the hydration by giving ORS. Okay. Another condition is heat stroke. So heat stroke also the main important treatment is giving rehydration. So for rehydration, along with the IV infusions, we can give ORS. If the patient is able to take oral fluids, we can substitute ORS to maintain our nutrition and hydration. The another important non-diarrheal use is from during the changeover from IV to enteral elimination. That means when a patient is having some severe diseases, or when the patient is having a polytrauma and for a long time, the patient will not be able to take oral fluids. That time we may be treated that patient by giving total parenteral nutrition. That means we are giving all the carbohydrate, proteins, fat and all by IV infusions. That is known as total parenteral preparation. So when the patient has get normal, or when the disease or when the condition is becoming normal, we will start on giving oral fluids. At that time, when we start with our regular food or regular method of giving food, it will be difficult for the patient for digesting or something. It can lead to some other conditions or some problems. So to change over, or from changing, when we are changing the patient from total IV feed to the enteral preparation, we can start with ORS. So the oral rehydration solution can be started, and it helps to maintain the same thing, hydration and nutrition. Okay, so this is the uses of ORS. Now we coming to the next treatment modality. It is the antimicrobial drugs. As I have told earlier, only a few percentage of diarrheal disease will be having pathogens. So before giving an antimicrobial drug, we have to confirm what type of bacteria it is. Then only we can give the antimicrobial agent or antibacterial agent which act against that bacteria. But one or more antibiotic agents are almost routinely prescribed by prescribed to every patient with diarrhea. So it is a common practice, but it is not the recommended practice, but commonly our physicians and doctors will prescribe some antibiotics along with the diarrhea. The bacterial pathogen is causative only in some patients, that I have already told. Only a few percent, 1 to 5% only there will be pathogen for diarrhea. And the antimicrobial reduces the duration and intensity of only certain type of bacterial diseases or bacterial diarrhea. So only a few type of bacterial diarrhea can be reduced the duration or intensity by giving this antimicrobial agents. Okay, then now we can see what type of bacteria are causing diarrhea, or what all type of bacterial diarrheas can be stopped with the antimicrobial drugs. First and important one is the cholera. Though only fluid replacement is life-saving, tetracycline reduces the stool volume nearly half. That means the main or the important treatment for cholera is giving fluid replacement. It is the life-saving method or life-saving treatment. Along with that, we can give tetracyclines to reduce the which reduced the stool volume and all. And instead of tetracycline, we can use second choice cotrimoxazole, norfloxacin, erythromycin can be used as second choice for treating cholera. And the next important bacterial agent is Campylobacter jejuni. Here norfloxacin and another fluoroquinolones can be used for treating Campylobacter jejuni. Next important one is Clostridium difficile. The Clostridium difficile is seen in our gut only when the disease or when the diarrhea is due to a produced by antibiotic associated pseudomembranous enterocolitis. That means when we are treating a patient with for some other diseases, when we are giving a broad spectrum antibiotics to a patient or some gram positive antibacterial agent for treating some other condition, it can lead to some antibiotic associated pseudomembranous enterocolitis, mainly caused by Clostridium difficile. And here the drug of choice of treatment of this Clostridium difficile is metronidazole. Here the treatment choice is metronidazole. And the other two important organisms causing diarrhea, amoebiasis and giardiasis. Here also the metronidazole is the drug of choice, and diloxanide fluoride can also be used for treating this condition. And one more thing you have to keep in mind that about the antimicrobial use, when we consider our diaphragm, the diseases occurring, the bacterial diseases occurring above the diaphragm, mainly the chest and our head and neck region, it will be mainly caused by gram positive organisms. Gram positive organisms. In 90% of cases it will be gram positive organisms. So we have to give gram the antibacterial agents acting for against the gram positive agents when the infection is above the diaphragm. And below the diaphragm means our intestinal and urogenital parts, the main infection will be caused by gram negative bacteria and also some anaerobic bacteria. So we have to 90% of cases it will be gram negative and anaerobic diseases. We have to give antimicrobial agents according to that. Okay, so but there will be difference in cases. There will be gram negative infection above the diaphragm, there will be gram positive infections below the diaphragm also. So but in a general case, above diaphragm it will be gram positive, below diaphragm it will be gram negative and anaerobes. So this is the main concept when we advise or give or when we administer any antibiotics. Next one is the probiotics. As I have told earlier, our gut flora has got some bacteria which lives in a symbiosis with our gut. So it will help for our digestion and all, and also they will take some nutrients from our food, but they don't cause any pathological disease or sometimes. So when we use broad spectrum antibiotics, or when there is a diarrheal disease and all, the normal gut flora will be distorted. So along with that, our normal bacteria also will be killed or it will be expelled out. So we have to replenish our gut flora by giving probiotics. It is a microbial cell preparation, either live culture or lyophilized powders, that restore and maintain our healthy gut flora. Diarrheal illnesses and antibiotic uses are associated with alteration in the population composition and balance of gut microflora, which I have already told. Recolonization of the gut by non-pathogenic, mostly lactic acid forming bacteria or yeast is believed to help restore this balance. So lactic acid producing some bacteria or yeast like bacteria will helps to recolonize our gut non-pathogenic region. So a variety of preparations containing single or multiple species of microorganisms are being used for this purpose. So nowadays variety of drugs are used. Out of that, lactobacillus species, bifidobacterium, streptococcus faecalis, enterococcus species, and yeast like Saccharomyces boulardii. So these all are different species of different species of bacteria which are used as probiotic. And along with that, we can use our homely measures like natural curd, yogurt, which is an abundant source of lactic acid producing bacteria or organisms in that, as a probiotic. Now we move to our non-specific antidiarrheal drugs. So this type of drugs or these non-specific antidiarrheal drugs may not be acting on the mechanisms which I have already discussed in the initial part. So first one is the anti-secretory drugs. That means it will reduces the secretion of the intestinal gut flora or intestinal gut mucosa and helps to reduce the stool volume. So it is the anti-secretory. Out of that, Resica-Dodril. It is a recently introduced prodrug which activate in the body and active form in the body inhibit the enzyme N-caffeilinase. So N-caffeilinase. What is N-caffeilinase? It is a endogenous opioid. Endogenous opioid means our drugs like opium, that is mainly our opioid drugs. So like morphine, opioid drugs like morphine, the mechanism is mainly according to the receptors of morphine and all. Like that, our body itself produces some opioid like or opioid receptor activating enzymes like N-caffeilinase. So here Resica-Dodril will inhibit the enzyme N-caffeilinase. The degradation of N-caffeilin, which is mainly delta opioid receptor agonist, is prevented. So there are many receptors for opioid type of drugs, mainly mu, kappa and delta. Out of that, this N-caffeilinase is mainly acting on delta type of receptors and it is an agonist at delta receptor. When it is prevented or when it is inhibited, which will reduces the hypersecretion of the intestine. Okay, so the N-caffeilin will be acting on delta receptor, which causes hypersecretion. This is the normal thing. So when the resveratrol is given, it will inhibit this action or this mechanism and reduces the stool volume. Okay. It affords a symptomatic relief in secretory diarrhea. So only it can be used, which will be helpful only in secretory type of diarrheas. Next one is anti-motility drugs. Here they are meant to reduce the motility of our gut. As we know, the gut has a normal propulsive movement. We start from the oral cavity and ends in the anus. So normally there is a process. So the anti-motility drugs will help to reduce that movement. They are also opioid drugs which increases the small bowel tone and segmental activities. Okay. And reduces the propulsive movement and diminish the intestinal secretion while enhancing the absorption. So when the movement is reduced, it get more time for absorption. Okay, and also it can also reduces the secretions. The drugs like codeine, diphenoxylate and loperamide are used for this purpose. Codeine is a natural compound. Diphenoxylate is a synthetic opioid. Loperamide is an opioid analog with major peripheral mu opioid and additional weak anticholinergic property. Anticholinergic property means reduces the secretion. So loperamide can reduces the motility, it can reduces the secretion. So when there is reduced motility, it get more time for absorption and increases, so it increases the absorption. Okay, these all are the non-specific antidiarrheal drugs. And one more thing you have to keep in mind, that the anti-motility drugs are contraindicated in acute infective diarrheas. So when we have diagnosed diarrhea and we have confirmed that it is due to some infection or some pathogen in the stool, then we are not supposed to use these antimicrobial anti-motility drugs, because they delay the clearance of pathogen from the intestine. Okay, the easiest way of expelling the bacteria in our intestine is by expelling out or through diarrheal content. So it will reduces the movement, so the pathogens cannot be cleared when it is delayed. So anti-motility drugs are contraindicated in acute infective diarrhea, and also in young children, or in children we can't use this anti-motility drugs. Okay. And finally, the drugs for inflammatory bowel diseases. As I have already told, in the inflammatory bowel diseases, majority they are idiopathic and autoimmune, probably an autoimmune disorder. So the diarrhea will not be due to all these mechanisms which I have already told. We will have to treat that infection, or sorry, we will have to treat that inflammatory disease, then only the diarrhea will be stopped. So the inflammatory bowel disease is a chronic relapsing inflammatory disorder of the ileum or colon, or both, which may be associated with systemic manifestations. Probably they are idiopathic and autoimmune disorders, and there are two types of inflammatory bowel diseases, mainly the ulcerative colitis and Crohn's disease. So these two are autoimmune disorder and it is idiopathic. Okay, so we have to treat that condition for stopping diarrhea. The drugs like sulfasalazine. There is some mistake in the spelling. It is sulfasalazine. Second one is mesalazine, and corticosteroids and immunosuppressants. I have just mentioned the names here. We will be having a detailed class about inflammatory bowel diseases later. So these all are the drugs, main drugs used for treating inflammatory bowel disease. So that's all for now. So keep in mind that the diarrheas, when we consider diarrheas, about 90 to 95% will be non-pathogenic diarrheas. So the main treatment needed is only rehydration. So you have to keep in mind that when we are using an anti-motility or anti-secretory drugs and all, we have to keep all the things which I have already mentioned. Hope this presentation or this class is helpful for you, and also you should read the concerned topic in your textbooks. That's all for now. Thank you all, and also I hope that all of you are safe at your home. Stay home, stay safe. With regards, Dr. Rahul. Thank you.